Right. Okay. Last time, on Gran Turismo 4, we did part 1 of the Polyphony Digital Cup. And now we are going to begin part 2. As so far, I have won all 4 races, including an absolute banger of a race in Tokyo last time around, where I was right behind the Turismo Fair Lady, heading into the final corner, but then, because my turbo was able to give me the slipstream at just the right time, I drafted him, and there was no contact involved, and I basically beat him to the line in a very clean pass. And what was even better about that battle was the fact that we were basically racing each other cleanly. And I know that's one thing you don't see very often in today's day and age, with a lot of racing game users, but I was definitely glad to say that I did fight a clean battle with the Turismo whilst I was at it. And now we're at Fuji Speedway for 6 laps. I don't think tyre wear is going to be too much of an issue here, even though we are driving 6 laps. I feel like I probably should put on the sport hards for this, just so I can get to the end with not too many issues. I think I'll do that, just to be safe. It might make my car slower initially, but at the very least I will manage to get to the end with enough tread on my boots. Plus, Fuji usually is a track that benefits the player more so than it does. And still getting wheel spin even though I upshifted, but I think I did get a better start than what I did before. And I am pretty sure that under the circumstances, it should be the player that has the advantage over the AI around 05 Fuji. The wheel spin I think was because the tyres were still cold. But I think I will get those warmed up soon enough. I'm not expecting this battle to go the same way as what the previous one did. I'm also pretty sure that because Fuji in pretty much its current guise, because it basically has been this way since 2005, if you exclude the chicane, which basically everyone hates. I would say we've got a good shot of winning this. And not just because of the chicane. Or if we don't win this, then well, it was at least nice to know that I did manage to get a quad of wins to basically open up the championship. But I think I should be okay around here because, as I said before, it's normally the player that has the advantage over the AI around the 2005 configuration. The layout has pretty much remained the same ever since, and it still remains, to the eyes of many, as being one of the fastest racetracks in the world. Hopefully, I will not be at too much of a disadvantage down the straights, but I don't think the turbo is really needed in order to win this. And as I can already tell, the front tyres are wearing out pretty quickly. I think that was probably the main reason why my brain just snapped at me and basically told me to put on the sports slicks. But already at this point, I think I seem to be doing okay. I mean, yeah, sure. I am dealing with a fair share of understeer, because most of the wear at the moment seems to be on the front tyres, but I at least know with the sport hard tyres that I at least have a shot of getting to the end without one of my tyres becoming delaminated. Plus, the other thing that might also make this surface abrasive is the fact that the track surface is still relatively new. Also, one other thing I noticed with this car is, because it has relatively low RPMs, it's also good to know that I actually don't lose too much acceleration when I am a gear above the gear most people would expect me to be in when it comes to driving cars with higher RPMs. But because this thing has its red zone at around 6,000 RPM, it does serve as a benefactor in terms of saying that I really don't need as many revs to push the car to still be quick, because it's those low range RPMs in this V4 engine that does prove the car can still be quick. A little bump from behind there, but nothing too egregious. I think that was probably a minor mistake there on my part. Either that or it was just a bump to basically, well, let him know I was there. That is something that does happen a lot in most sports, where you know someone, mostly teammates, are basically going to tell you which position they're in, just so your leader knows that your guy is behind you, or your teammate, if we're being thoroughly honest. I think in some cases it's just a common part of sports to pretty much, keep either your fellow players or your fellow drivers on the same page as you, to know that you do understand each other. And a little bit of understeer there as I came off the chicane. And the reason why I think everyone hates that chicane is because oftentimes, if you don't get it right, that chicane will punish you. And it will practically punish you even more than I would honestly argue the dipper corner will at Mount Panorama. Because the dipper practically is the hardest corner you can master at Mount Panorama. And here at Fuji, I would say it's honestly that chicane down at the bottom that practically is the hardest to master. But as I would have expected, player advantage does ultimately play into my hands pretty well. And it looks like this one could be another close battle. Of course, unlike Motegi, however, I had to work my way to the front. And I think I also did the same thing in Tokyo as well, which is partly the reason as to why it was such a compelling battle in the first place. A little snap of understeer there as I came off that left-hander. I do know my lefts and rights. And that allows the fair lady to sneak through. And I find nothing wrong with that because, well, it shows that we're racing. And it also shows that, under the circumstances, we both understand each other. So, just gotta be careful through here. It can be very easy to go off at the exit of that chicane. There have been plenty of drivers over the years who have fallen victim to that one chicane. At least there have been plenty of sim racing drivers who have fallen victim to that chicane and either spun out at it or just simply don't like the corner because of the way it's designed. But at least I can say it's not a ridiculous first corner. Like that one instance at a touring car race in 2008, where I think it was former BTCC driver John Cleland who quite literally made the remark of saying, literally, that guy who designed this first corner should be taken in a dark room and beat about the head. At least I think that was what he said. And I think it was partly because of that one race in, I think it was 2008, if I remember correctly. But either way, it was that one race in 2008 where probably one of the funniest commentary memes basically came from John Cleland. Probably even more enticing than Jim Mora's whole playoff rant about the 2001 Colts. At least I think it would have to be something similar to that in terms of good sporting memes, if you will. And ones that, in some cases, you could honestly say are either so good or so bad that you know they will stand the test of time for whichever reason you think is more plausible. And it looks like this one is going to be yet another battle for the win here between myself and the Fair Lady Z. Neither one of us are letting the other one get away. We're very much like magnets at this time. We're just practically inseparable at this point. And I can certainly say that both of us are very much in a class of our own compared to everyone else. Which probably was to be expected, as I set a new best lap time of a 2:02.3. I was expecting these laps to probably take more than 2 minutes to set. But either way, I think it still shows that both of us are very much still contending. For some of these W's we seem to keep striving and fighting for. I mean, he's not letting me get away. Also, one other thing that should be mentioned about that whole first corner meme is the fact that when they came back the following year in 2009, they actually did redesign the first corner. I couldn't tell you what track it was at, but I know that the first corner design was absolutely ridiculous, and it quite literally caused a pile up because of how ridiculous the design was at the time. But anyway. Oh yeah, it's the final lap here at Fuji. I was honestly so caught up in that whole first corner meme that I quite literally forgot that we were at the end of this one. But either way, it's one way that you can more or less argue is a good way for me to get you through the first one. And no overlapping this time around. And it looks as though I am going to win 5 in a row. And there we go. 5 victories in a row for the Volvo S60. as I beat the Fair Lady by 2.2 seconds. Just having a sip of my tea there, that was why I muted the mic for a second there. So there we go, 50 points to me, 30 points to the Turismo, 20 points to the FC, and 15 points to the 206. It looks as though the top 4 are very much going to remain Noah's Ark, from what I can see. If things stay the way they are now. But either way, there we go. And you know what? I think I will save this replay. Because I saved one at the old Fuji Speedway, and right now, I actually want to save one at the new Fuji Speedway. Because I don't think I have done that for a while, or if ever up to this point of the game. Of course, I could be wrong about that, but either way, I am pretty sure I did not save a replay at the 05 Fuji Speedway. Until now, that is. But either way, that should more or less get the point across. Now let's head to race 6. And we are at Motorland Reverse. I don't know about this one, but because it's going to be 19 laps long, I feel like I need to keep my sport hard tyres on for this one. Just so tyre wear does not give me any issues later on. Yeah, we'll go and do it. I might be at a disadvantage early on, but I think as the race goes on and the AI start to wear their tyres out, that's probably where I am most likely going to catch them napping. Or at least that's probably where I'll most likely catch the Turismo napping. Because in spite of the amount of understeer I get from this car, I still think it's a pretty good car overall. As I managed to rather forcibly get past the 206. The 206 convertible, I might add. As I clear the FC up the inside, and also get some wheel spin as a result. The AI often do tend to be better around Motorland than the player, which is probably the main reason why at this time I am currently 4 seconds back. Well, I probably wasn't going to win every race. I probably should have put the turbo on if I really felt like it, but if I do wind up losing, then well, you'll pretty much know why. I mean, my rear tyres at this point are still pretty cold, so the AI do have an advantage here at Motorland compared to the player. That's one thing I will confirm. So it looks like my win streak will end at 5. But I think that's okay, because I do have 5 wins in a row already. I really don't think the turbo would have helped me out either. I could have put it on, but I still think I wouldn't have been able to pull it off, even if I wanted to. I probably wasn't going to get a clean sweep for this one, but at least I can say the run was good while it lasted. And at this point, that's honestly not too bad for a comparison, and oh, fuck me. Don't spin, don't spin, don't spin, don't spin! Thank God, I actually saved it. Well, looks like it's going to be a pretty lonely second for me, unless I wind up battling the FC, which is very possible. And I am also having to deal with the sound of the vacuum cleaner in the background. Yeah, I don't think I'm catching up to the fair lady anymore. I think he's just got too much of an edge at the moment. I honestly don't think the turbo would have really helped me out either. I'm pretty sure this is one race I likely would have lost, because the AI, from what I know, are slightly better than the player around Motorland. This is one of those very few tracks where the AI actually are better than the player, if you don't have the right parts. Yeah, 13 seconds, I doubt I would have been able to close that. Unless I had one of the Japanese JDM spec cars. That probably would have been my better choice for this, if I was going to sweep it. Well, I suppose you can't win them all. And if it means I have to sacrifice a few points just to quite literally show that I am still the most consistent, then so be it. But I know as soon as we get to, I would say, probably Le Mans, that's where I think I will be better. Because that normally is a track where the AI are not as strong as the player. Yeah, I think the Turismo at this point has pretty much got me attached to strings. And if he continues running at the pace he's at, he might even put me a lap down. That is very possible. But unless he suffers from tyre issues, which might also be possible. Although then again, I don't think I'm going to catch him, really. I probably wasn't going to get the sweep with the Volvo because it's not a Japanese JDM car, like lots of other Japanese import tuner cars that you see in this game. I think there probably was going to be... I almost lost it again, but thankfully I just saved it. And it looks as though at this point he could very well overlap me before this is all said and done. I mean, he's just lapping at a rocket ship pace right now. Also, I have nearly driven 100 miles in this, which is something else that I should deem noteworthy. Also, just for shits and giggles, I might even consider using my Subaru Sport Wagon for cleaning up the races I didn't win. Just for shits and giggles. And also to just, well, continue to be funny, if you will. I probably wasn't expecting myself to win every race in this championship. But of course, as I know from previous experience, it's probably not too surprising to say that the AI do have a slight advantage over the player here. This is just one of those very few tracks in the game where the AI is slightly better than the player, as I almost hit the pit wall. That would have been rather embarrassing if I had hit the pit wall, but thankfully strayed away from it. I think the only way I can really see myself winning this is if the Turismo pits in for a late pit stop, but I don't see that happening because he's already too far ahead as it is, even if he does make a stop. But either way, I am fine to accept losses every once in a while, as long as I can basically go back and clean them up later on. That's probably what I will end up doing once I am done with this, as I now overlap the Honda Jazz, and I'm now looking for a spot to overlap the Fiat, and I give a little bump. He's blocking me at the moment, and I managed to clear him. Yeah, there's a definite possibility that says if I do go for a spin, then the Turismo will definitely overlap me before too long, depending on how far ahead he is, because I really cannot keep up with him. He's already 17 seconds up the road. I know he's not going to overlap me, but I really don't see how I can catch him around here. It's just not possible at the moment, unless he dives in for a late pit stop and takes all the time in the world. But even then, I really don't see that happening. So it looks like it is gonna be me settling for second. First time in a while I have actually lost a race in this segmented playthrough. I think it's the first time I have officially lost a race since probably the rally events. I think that was the last time when I lost a race in this playthrough. At least in terms of actually conceding a loss. Because, well, like the wind, that wasn't a conceded loss, that was basically me having to surrender to fate. Even when I had minimal downforce, I still couldn't do it. Although I will say, I did make a good decision by putting on the sport hard tyres because, well, I've got a lot of wear on my right front tyre, and I don't think that's an understatement either. I've definitely been struggling to really get any pace out of my ride for this. This really has been a struggle. And I did say before that this is one of those very few tracks where the AI actually does have the advantage over the player, just in terms of raw speed. I think this was something I found out from doing the, I think it was the lightweight K-Cup if I'm not mistaken. When I basically had to put on a turbo in order to really have a shot at winning. And my right front tyre is just getting delaminated at the moment. It is not liking the roads of Motorland at this moment in time. It's really wanting me to go into the pits. And at this point, if that tyre turns red, then I might just do it. Just because I feel like at this point I simply cannot cope with being on these tyres anymore. I had a feeling that sooner or later the understeer was going to take its toll on the tyres. Even though I am technically on the hardest set of boots, I feel like at this point I might have to ultimately concede to fate, because I really cannot drive like this, where my right front tyre is nearly dead. Okay, that's it, I'm pitting. I am not coping with this anymore. If I have to get overlapped just to put on a fresh set of tyres, then I'll do it. Because I cannot keep running around here with a deflated front tyre. That's just not possible. And here comes the fair lady to put me one lap down. Although, I think since I'm now on a fresh set of boots, I might be able to nab the fastest lap away from him. I think even if I did have the turbo one, there would probably be no chance of me beating him. Because even though I do have a fast car, I also have a heavy car. Which technically means that it would have been to my disadvantage in terms of tyre wear, because that's just the way it would have gone. And even if I did have the turbo one, the tyre wear would have probably been enough to keep me out of winning the race anyway. So, first time in this game I'm actually going to be overlapped by the race winner. But you know what? I figured my winning ways had to end sooner or later. I probably did get a little bit lucky with that win in Tokyo. If it wasn't going to happen there, it was almost certainly going to happen here. And as you can see already, the wear on my right front tyre has taken a toll, so I will finish one lap down at Motorland. I was trying to see if I could do a donut. Unfortunately, the understeer did not allow it, which is a bit sad, but whatever. My first loss for a while, and it happened to put me one lap down. Even on a fresh set of tyres, I could do absolutely nothing about that fair lady. So these are your standings after 6 races. 56 points to me, and now 40 points to the Fair Lady Z. Took me 6 races to ultimately concede a loss. And you know what? I think I'll bounce back from that fairly quickly. I knew that sooner or later there was going to be at least one point where my form was going to be crushed, and I think that's precisely what happened here. But now we are at a track I am familiar with, and will probably also have a good shot of winning, providing tyre wear is not an issue. And that is Circuit de la Sarthe. And where for this, I'm pretty sure tyre wear is not going to be as much of an issue. So I think we should be fine here. So, 2 laps around Circuit de la Sarthe, and we're just going to get to it. I wouldn't think I would need the turbo for this, because we're not having to do as much turning around here as we did at Motorland. where a majority of the course is basically anti-clockwise. This I would very much say is a clockwise course. So I think that's one reason behind why I believe we'll be okay here. And why I believe we should be able, in a way, to at least get ourselves probably 8 of our next 10 wins, or around that mark, because hopefully tyre wear will not be too much of an issue at the Nürburgring, but if it is, then well, I'll just go fuck myself. And probably switch over to my Subaru pretzel wagon. And yes, if you're asking, that was a cross-reference to a Simpsons meme. But I'm not gonna sing the song, because I don't want to. But yeah, we basically will be using our Subaru pretzel wagon for cleaning up these other races, because tyre wear will not be as much of an issue. That's why I put the mediums on here, because I was convinced in saying I was not going to have too many issues. I'm convinced in saying the most we can achieve is probably 8 out of 10 wins. And if that's not the case, then 7 is probably a better estimation. Because even though I am using my grippier set of tyres, I still have to be aware in saying that I am using a heavier car than what the Turismo is. Because I would say the Turismo is around 1,000 kilograms, and my car still weighs 1,300 kilograms. Which is definitely more than a lot. But I am glad to say my raw speed is able to help me catch up to the Turismo. I think we'll probably get 7 out of 10 for this one, if all goes well. I mean, I have already won 5 races up to this point anyway, so it's not like winning hasn't been... It's not like my winning hasn't been good up to this point of the championship anyway. I just have to make sure that I keep finishing behind the Turismo, and then we should be fine. Providing my front tyres do not absolutely destroy themselves. Which is possible around here, but since we're only doing 2 laps, hopefully that won't be too much of an issue. We'll have to wait and see where we are in terms of tyre wear by the time we get to the end of lap 1. But I think we should probably be, I think, in the yellow zone, potentially. Or at least the light green zone for the front tyres. Because most of the wear seems to be on the front tyres rather than the rear tyres. I mean, the rear tyres are fine, but the front tyres, well, they definitely seem to take a lot more of the punishment. Because even though my car is good on corner entries, it's not very good on corner exits. Because I don't really seem to be getting enough grip out of the rear tyres to really mount the offensive attack that I think this car can mount. But either way, at this point I should be fine, because I'm right behind the fair lady anyway. Plus, under most circumstances, the player usually is better than the AI around Le Mans. It's just one of those places where you know you will be faster. Just with the track layout and pretty much everything else in between. And just as I would have thought, I do clear the Turismo Fair Lady with a reasonable advantage, which is pretty much what I expected. So, yeah. Originally I was wanting to see if I could use the Volvo 240 for this, but because I found out that my Volvo 240 was just woefully off the pace compared to the Fair Lady, I would have just had absolutely no chance of beating him in points or in any of the races. I would have just been hammered by him every time, because I was at least 7 seconds off the pace when I qualified with the Volvo 240 GLT. In other words, I basically had no chance of catching him in any way whatsoever. But with the Volvo I almost said XC60. But with the Volvo S60, I do feel like I have a good enough car to beat him on pretty much any given race day, whether it be a Saturday or a Sunday. Well, in this case it would technically be a Saturday because, well, that's when I am recording this. And it will probably also be the last thing I finish until I get back from my next 2-week holiday, which hopefully by that point I will have managed to upload most of the segments I needed to upload to basically finish the summer stretch. And already the player advantage is showing up, and no such tyre issues this time around, which means I am very much in a class of my own in terms of just the overall pace. And unsurprisingly, the rest of the field is very much just, well, present. And now, heading through Arnage Corner for the second and last time in this race. The Turismo is not letting me get too far away at this point, but I think I have pulled away enough to say that whatever tyre issues I might have had at Motorland, they are nowhere near present here at Le Mans. We are very much in a class of our own. As I lead by 2.3 seconds. I did have some close battles along the way with the Fair Lady at both Motegi and in Tokyo. But aside from those two races, I have more or less seemed to manage to basically beat him with the second in hand at the least. which does show that overall, even where this car does have its weaknesses, I still have the overall better car because I have the right parts to prove it. And in the end, I outduel him again by virtually 3 seconds. And no one else is going to make it to the line. I guarantee that as well. Because everyone else is just way the fuck behind us. But there we go. So, it doesn't look like the points are going to be changing in any way. In terms of who the top 4 drivers will be. 66 points to me, 46 points to the Turismo. And then the rest of the field is just, well, they're pretty much single file. And so there we go. Part 2 of the Polyphony Digital Cup is now done. And that took me 46 minutes to get through those 3 races. I think the next 3 races will probably take a similar length. But anyway, that was part 2, now we move on to part 3.